to be here, and we have a very exciting 2-hour program planned today on unleashing the power of AI. Before we get started, I'd like you to introduce yourselves to everybody else by telling us where you are in your AI journey. So the first thing is, can I ask you to close your eyes? 大家把眼睛帮我闭一下, okay? All right. If you believe that AI will bring about tremendous value, please raise your hand for me. Fantastic. Okay, next question. If you have begun to deploy AI at your company or in your workflow, please raise your hand. Okay. Third question. If you think to fully unleash the power of AI, there's real work to be done. Please raise your hand. Fantastic. Okay, open your eyes for me, please. Thank you. So 100% of you raised your hand on being a believer in the power of AI. About half of you have begun to deploy AI in your workflow, and all of which that have started essentially said it will take real work to really see the value. And this is exactly the kinds of themes and topics we'll explore today. We have a very exciting 3-part program. If we could go to the next slide. So there are 3 parts to this 2 hours. The first one is an opening keynote by my colleagues on really the really top-of-mind topics here, including sharing our own journey, turning 100 years of consulting into an AI, right? The second, we will have a very exciting interview talking about deploying AI at a very specific situation. And then we'll have a tech panel to really understand what it takes to really deploy this at scale. And we'll go into a bit of a Q&A where we would love to engage with you, hear your questions, and have discussions. Now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Alex Zawaya, our senior partner, who leads our Quantum Black, which is our AI capability in Asia, and Michael Chang, who leads our McKinsey technology practice, and Quantum Black also in Greater China. Here it is to them.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to have you here. Michael and I we'll try to keep this to about 30 minutes. And we're here to talk about how do we actually scale and adopt advanced analytics in enterprises. Before we actually start, it's important to put the context to essentially where we are operating today. We are in the 4th industrial revolution, right? And this industrial revolution is different from the previous ones. Everything is happening at an incredible pace, right? And this is kind of the first important context to think about. If you look at how did people, so we did a quick search on ChatGPT to understand what people have been using ChatGPT on and how is it changing over the years. And what you see is that what people were doing last year has significantly changed today. As people discover this technology more, they're actually kind of using it and adopting it very differently, right? And if you see the first or the top things that people at home use generative AI for is much more on the personal side, right? It's therapy, it's companionship, but it's also kind of how to better organize life. It's less around, are we going to solve the next big problem, and doing homework for our kids, right? It has actually been relatively personal, and this has actually changed. It's even more accentuated with companies. In between 2000 and 2022, which is when really kind of, generative AI was introduced, there was, of course, a lot of hope, but also some skepticism and fear of what this new technology is bringing. And what you've seen is companies were very much in experimentation mode. The last 3 years has all been about trying to do small, independent, self-contained POCs to get more familiar with the technology. This is still the case today, right? You have not seen adoption of generative AI at scale yet. However, there's significantly more willingness today, after really kind of understanding what this technology can do, to actually start thinking about the next phase of adoption at scale within an organization.
And if we think about just how quickly things are moving, right? All of this is a reminder that we need to pay attention to what's happening, right? I think we're at an inflection point, and going back to what Alex just said, this year is really about how to scale, how to build potentially much more agentic applications of AI. And you hear the word agentic a lot, and we'll talk about what actually that means for enterprises and companies. But if you just look at what has happened since December of last year to now, models have gotten way larger, right? Training costs have gone down. The time to generate reports, time to generate work has been significantly decreased, right? So all of this means we have far more computing power. A lot of the foundations that are needed are in place. So it's about really how does companies adopt all the new applications of AI that we will talk about. On the next page, we can also, looking at the broad spectrum of kind of the macro technology advancements of AI, there's essentially kind of two parallel school of thinking that's developing very quickly. You have the much more bigger is better model, which is what X is currently working on with their own AI system, right? In terms of the number of scale of the GPUs that they require. And from Jensen's speech the last 2 days, that's obviously one big part of scaling out bigger, better models. But then you also have the DeepSeek model, which we've seen, especially the last 3 months, being quite game-changing in terms of how they're building models at a much cheaper rate and using and doing inferences at a much lower cost. Both of these things help enterprises basically adopt AI, right? And this clears a bunch of the bottlenecks and hurdles that we have seen in the past. So agentic, what is it and why does it matter? I think there's so many demo videos out there of what agentic is and all the ways that it will change our daily life. But if you think about an enterprise, we always had this vision of our jobs being kind of assisted by AI, right? Or AI potentially doing part of our work. But where we are right now on the spectrum is basically going from 1 to 2, which is you have someone that's helping you, boosting productivity maybe by 20%. In actual fact, closer to 10 to 15. Where you are seeing now some companies moving is to 3, which is you actually have a practitioner that has certain jobs, certain tasks that's handled by an agent, right? That means it's not a person that he needs to instruct. It is an AI that is able to take information, make judgment, and take action. Where you see it moving is really on how do you have one person now controlling an army of agents, where they're all given a specific task. So as long as you write a clear scope of work, they're able to execute, right? We see this in software development as like the first initial application because those workflows are very set and standardized. But that is where we're moving in terms of operations within a company. How do you actually run your organization in the future with an army of agents to support your individuals in the company?
All the attention is going in the last couple of years on generative AI. Okay? This is, in the news, in the boardrooms, among CXOs, but the value still lies in traditional AI. Okay? So this is an important thing to keep in mind. 70% of the value that is extracted from, or that is created through AI still will come from your standard forecasting models, pricing, promotion optimization, supply chain optimization. So this is all coming from traditional AI. Generative AI will come and amplify the impact through what Michael just mentioned. The value is also not created equal. Different sectors will have significantly more generative AI impact that they can grab. It's the same thing for functions, right? So on the marketing and sales and operations, you will see significantly more value than other less sophisticated functions. And you have companies that have really found a way to drive value, right? So for tech natives, it's relatively more innate in them to kind of create these adoptions. But you also see significantly more traditional companies that have actually kind of set on a journey to become AI companies. Banks are heavily regulated, typically very difficult to move. The trick, and we were going to talk about this for the rest of the presentation, is that there has been a significant push from the top to actually kind of transform, become more digital, but more importantly, extract value so that you can actually get the full benefit of analytics.
Yeah, but of course the picture is not all rosy, right? If it was all good, then we wouldn't be giving this talk, right? So most organizations that we've seen in the market really struggle with adopting AI. You see the majority of companies around the world actually starting the journey, right? Whether it's a POC or a pilot, but the ones that really deploy at scale, and at scale, the definition being across multiple functions, multiple application, is about 10%, right? So 80% goes essentially nowhere, gets stuck in a trap. And out of that 10%, only half really get to what we say across one workflow. Because where we noticed is if you just have one or two use cases on an application or on a process, it doesn't drive value. You just shift the bottleneck of the process, or at least what gets stuck, the bottleneck later on in the process, right? So how do we actually deploy at a whole workflow to bring impact? That's something that we'll explore later. What is the reason for that, right? I think if you're broadly breaking them into three buckets, there is a business-focused reason, which is most business owners see this as a tech project. Oh, go talk to my CIO, my CDO. That's their responsibility. Or it's the company is operating fine. I don't think that AI is really going to change our business, right? That's what we hear a lot. That's one part of the reasoning, right? The middle part is the technology reason. People tend to over-index on this, right? Oh, our architecture is not ready. Our data is not ready. But actually, the biggest part in the technology piece is talent. Do we have the right expertise in the IT organization, the digital organization, that knows how to bring what the business want to life? And the last piece is on culture. People are resistant to change in general. People are extra resistant when it comes to AI. Whether it's the hype or they feel threatened, there's the trust element. That's something that we need to address. So across these three things, we need to find a way to really change the organization and change a lot of the way that we work to counteract these root causes.
Now, there is good news, right? So to address the challenges, what McKinsey has done last year is we actually looked at 2,000 companies that actually went on a digital journey and a digital transformation. And we tried to look at the ones that have been more successful, what they have done differently. And the way we think about this, and this is kind of a book, we published that in a book called Rewired, and we look at this through a framework that has 6 parts. The first one is really around, which is at the top and the most important one, is really kind of what was the strategic intent and purpose of that whole transformation. And then we look at 4 different pillars that actually kind of support and drive that vision, which is around talent, data, infrastructure, and operating model. But none of this matters if you actually don't have the foundations to actually kind of drive adoption at scale in a company. Now, the learnings from, and we're going to get a bit into more details, but the learning when it comes to the first part, or the top part of that framework around the strategic roadmap, what you've seen at one extreme is companies really, like Michael mentioned, it's technology or tech or digital is not that important to transform my business. I have democratized and everybody does whatever they want, right? And there are companies where you actually go in and there's thousands of use cases independently driven, not anchored in value. All the way to the other extreme, which is people look, and this is kind of what Michael will talk about, we look at how you drive value in a company. We call this performance foundations. And along these performance foundations come a set of use cases. Typically, you will have between 50 and 60 that really matter for the company. And you link these specifically to value. You actually know for each performance foundation, what is the value that you are driving and what are the investments. So you have a real view of ROI. The second one is on talent, right? There is significantly more need today for two types of talents in the organization. Specialized technical ones, right? Which is really understand the latest technologies, understand how to use these technologies in a faster, quicker way. On the other side, you need business leaders that truly understand how technology adds business value to their business. And getting these two right in a company typically creates a very good support to the next point, which is your operating model. For the operating model, what you need is business first, business-driven kind of squads that has very clear view of the business needs and are able to translate them seamlessly towards with your technology and talent, and drive in an agile way so that you make shorter, faster iterations. The tech infrastructure, a lot of clients come and say that, I don't have, I need to invest in tech, I need to really kind of drive my infrastructure independently from where the value is. And what you realize is a lot of the investments you actually don't need in the company. Data, right? So this is usually the biggest roadblock into any transformation. The reality is companies have significantly more data than they think they have. And what you do is you need the data that's only the ones that support your use cases. The last one is on adoption, right? So I would say 70 or 80% of why these transformations fail is because you actually have successfully delivered whatever product you need. People actually don't use it. They don't use it because they don't know how to use it, they have not been trained, they don't believe, there's no conviction in it, or they frankly kind of just as resistance in the company in general to change.
So, if everyone here wanted to see us demonstrate a bunch of use cases, I want to disappoint you all and say that is not the point of this presentation. We typically hate the idea of a use case library. All right? A use case library gives everyone the feeling that is a checklist of things that you can select and that somehow will bring value. What we see instead is it's much more about processes, not use cases. All right? When you look at a company in general, you have thousands of processes from L2, L3, all these different levels of granularity. But if you go into a company and say, what does it take for me to win? There's probably 30 processes that are really critical. In an e-commerce company versus a manufacturing company versus a retail company, those 20 most important processes are different. But the processes that you identify that really have impact behind them, that will drive a lot of kind of overall competitiveness, we call that performance foundations. You focus on redesigning those first. So if you go to the next page, when we say we look at these performance foundations, we select them, we reimagine the business process. This step 2 is actually the most critical part, and I think what's really lacking in most organizations. Businesses don't know how their process can be reimagined with AI because they frankly don't know what AI can do. Technology team has, over the last 50 years, been horrible at speaking the language of business and knowing what business really needs. So when we talk a lot about approaches later, it's really how to do step 2, right? How do you translate the future vision of the business in a way that technology teams and organizations can help to enable? And then from that, you do get your use cases, right? You still have to land it on use cases somehow, right? And then you detail that out and you prioritize in a way that is linked to the impact that that process brings. So you can say, I need 4 use cases together to be able to make this process flow, right? Those 4, that interdependency needs to be on a roadmap and sequenced properly so you can capture that value. If you build kind of spread salt and pepper across the whole organization, you're never going to get the impact you expect. So that sequencing, that roadmap really matters. If you take one example of customer service, right? How do you get impact from customer service? Look, the right side of the page is kind of the answer, right? Which is how do you increase productivity so that you reduce your cost to serve? If you focus on any one step of this process, you don't actually reduce the total size of your customer service team. It's really a combination of these levers. How do you do better planning of your workforce? How do you prevent issues from happening in the first place? How do you then do more self-service, more tier 1 resolution without the need for human escalation? And then on the human side, how do you actually capture that, kind of address the issues in a faster way, in a more productive way, and then optimize your knowledge so that it reduces the issues from popping up. The bottom is the use cases that you need to make this process flow. But again, if you just focus on the AI chatbot, which a lot of companies have already, does that really change the overall view if you don't address the others? No. You still need the people to handle escalations when they come. So how do you actually reduce the cost to serve? It's through all these other digital use cases on the map.
Adoption starts from day one. So what you see here is the typical approach that we take when we are doing the performance foundation transformation, right? So you have the business side and the digital side that are involved. You have a very rigorous process that the company actually goes through, starting with really understanding what is the business need that I am solving for, right? And that business need starts with the business, is then translated into what does it mean from a technology requirement. Then this happens in a sprint. The next thing is what are the features that I actually need to be able to deliver that business value. Then there's a step that actually comes next, which is what is the return that we expect and the investments required. Then there's an element of what are the infrastructure and data needs that are required, right? So what you see is you move through down the funnel all the way to, I have then a POC that I'm testing, I got feedback, it is now ready to go into an MVP, then you move to the MVP phase where you have a set of people that are using these use cases or that performance foundation. And once the feedback is clear and then the impact and the user experience is fair, you actually move into a full scaling in the organization. And what you see is that you both have milestones for the business side as well as for the technology side. And typically in companies, what you see is you either have one or the other. And here you actually need to have both. They're in sync and very much driven together. So Agile has been there forever, so I actually personally don't like the terminology anymore. But the concept of it is actually very powerful. What you have typically in the company is you will have, in the large-scale transformation up to, hundreds of different squads that are working on performance foundations. And these actually operate as fighting units. These fighting units have an integral part of the business, the technology, and sometimes deep expertise when it comes to AI to make sure that whatever we're building it very quickly, very efficiently, in a very iterative manner, with the right cadence, with the right approvals, so that you reduce development cycles and deployment cycles by having the cadence and the practices, the tools that are required to basically ensure that everybody is aligned and on the same page. And then most importantly, focus on the end user. Who is going to be using this tool or this product that we're going to be deploying? And are they convinced, and there is conviction, that this is what they actually need? When we typically go through this end-to-end process, Michael mentioned that we actually try to avoid having individual use case rollouts. When we actually go through this, we pick the 4 or 5 that actually really change the entire process, that make sure that bottlenecks are not moved, but they're really kind of either elevated or completely removed from the picture. And the way you do it is, the first one is really understanding what are the set of minimum viable product and use cases that needs to be rolled out, and understanding how to sequence them. And the day you actually decide to move forward, there are 3 things that needs to happen. The first one is there needs to be an event. We focus a lot on this. There needs to be a formal event for the new process to go live. Second one is engaging people that are going to be using that process, not just throughout the journey, but really kind of when the main event happens. And the last one, which is the most important one, is training people so that they actually know what they're going to do on the second day when they start using this process. Now, the most important thing probably in this presentation is this. Okay? For adoption, most companies, typically they will spend $50 on change management to every dollar you invest in technology. Best companies have a ratio of 1 to 5. Okay? Michael will talk about Lily now, which is our way of transforming ourselves. We have a ratio of $1 to $3 between technology and change management and adoption, right? Because you might throw as much money as you want on the technology side. If people don't know why they're actually, so this, the four part of, the influence model. If they don't know why they're actually using it, how it's going to make their life better, how of understanding and making sure that they understand how to actually use this different tool, and then give them the incentives, right, and the rewards, the carrots and sticks. Adoption will become, or is usually kind of a very difficult process to come across.
So I think we put Lily on the agenda because we hope that it would get some of you all to be interested in this presentation. So I think Lily has been on the news in the past couple of months as a tool that we are helping to make our consultants more effective. I think people have come up to us that ask, is the consulting industry going to die, right? Is AI going to replace your jobs? And I think for now the answer is no, but it will make us better at our job. And I think that's also how we tell our clients that AI is really going to support your teams. So what is Lily and what does it do? It is essentially both an agent as well as a repository, a virtual expert to assist us in gathering information. A big part of us being able to generate good insights and analysis is that we have information from all of our knowledge repositories over the last 100 years of us consulting for different industries and different clients. We also have transcripts from a lot of our expert interviews, whether through our external expert network or through the partners and senior partner knowledges. Essentially, we've launched this now a year and a half ago, and then we have reached adoption of around 92% of the overall company, right? And that engagement on a monthly basis is about 30,000. Now, what does that 30,000 mean? The next page. We at McKinsey had about 40,000 total consultants in the organization, right? We're around 92% adoption, which means monthly active users. And this is built up over time. So to this point that Alex was making, it's all about adoption, right? It's not about deploying. It's how you introduce different functions and train up the organization over time. You'll see that at the very beginning, it was really about just having a little bit of a small interest group to create hunger marketing so that people hear about the tool but don't yet have access. And then we eventually get to this inflection point where enough people are asking to have the tool on their computer that we then say, okay, let's release it broadly for everybody. So the global launch is mid-October. At that point, we already had quite a few people that reached out individually to want the tool. Once you see the global launch, it actually, the rate of kind of increase actually slows down, and then we start introducing a lot of additional, training, a lot of different functions, increasing the functionality and the performance of the tool. So kind of 4.0 when it was introduced is built in, and now we have a dedicated mini app for Perplexity to help us do external research. And the last thing that we announced in December is essentially agents. So we can use Lily to create our own agents, and we can also use it to build PowerPoints better. So it's fully integrated into our workflow in terms of the way that we create our materials. Back to what Alex is saying, adoption is the most important thing. So the influencing model is these 4 pillars on the left, right? Your left. It's driving the understanding, make people understand why they need to change, right? And the way to do that is top-down communication. It's a lot of showcasing events of all the cool things that the tool can do. It is mobilizing and role modeling. So as partners, we need to be the ones to tell our teams, this is the way that we need to work. We need to set expectations differently. We need to show them that we're using the tool on a day-to-day basis. I'm building the skills and capability. If people are told to do something but they don't know how to do it, they won't do it, right? So how do you actually build that knowledge and then reinforce it, right? We have incentives. We have different KPIs that we do track to get people to use this more. The bottom 2 enablers is helpful, right? Number 1 is like understanding how we do adoption. How do we launch alpha and beta in a thoughtful way to get people to use the tool more and be excited for new functionality? And number 2 is how do we refine the project and the product to be even more powerful based on the feedback that we gather. Okay.
If you go back to the beginning of the presentation, 90% of companies have actually embarked on a digital transformation somehow. only 5% have actually managed to really justify the value or show that there was real value and returns to that transformation. We also spoke about, what were some of the learnings, right? And how do we think about transformations to actually drive impact, right? So the 6-part rewired framework. And there's really 3 things that, we want you to take away from all that discussion today. The first one is not about use cases, it's all about performance foundations. The most important processes that you have in a company that needs to be rewired or transformed. And against that, there will be a set of non-digital and digital use cases that you will need to drive. I think the second one is, you actually don't need to do your investments in one go. Actually, the right way to do it is starting with where the impact is coming from. How do you actually build and invest in your infrastructure and data over time so that you actually get the better return on your investment? And the last one, which is, again, something that we have completely applied on our Lily adoption at McKinsey, is change management. Spend more money on getting people to adopt what you're driving than what you're actually investing on your technology. Thank you.
Okay, with that, why don't we have our distinguished guests join us on stage. I wanted to quickly introduce Lan, who is the Chief Digital Officer and Senior Vice President of LVMH. She is based in Shanghai and is going to share with us some of her views of how to lead a conglomerate through embedding AI and integrating it into their business.
Len, thank you so much for being here. So Len is an alum of the firm, and she's a close friend, and she has graciously agreed to come and have this discussion with us here. Within her role of Chief Digital Officer for LVMH in Asia, she actually has a lot of, across one of the most complex organizations, I would say, in the world, has a lot of kind of learnings to actually share with us today. Lan, let me start by asking you a very straight question to start with. There's a lot of hype around technology and around digital, okay? In your experience, or at least from your vantage point, is this real? Or do you guys see this as still something that is overhyped in the market?
Thank you, Alex. First of all, very happy to be here. I'm very honored that you invited me. I think the real or unreal AI question, for me, I studied computer engineering in Singapore, and I had a master in computer science. So I have to say I'm a true believer of AI, just it's the way I was born. And throughout my journey, my first job was at Microsoft in Seattle, in Redmond. I was a product manager for advertising platform, right? And you just showed how Google and Meta has derived so much value in advertising. I think even 20 years ago, when I started as a product manager, AI has been there, right? Which ad do we show? How do we think about revenue and relevance? How do we think about the bidding platform? Everything is driven by AI. So I think it's there 20 years ago. It might be what you call traditional AI, but it has been there. And since 20 years, I think AI has started from tech company to multiple industries, consumer retail, finance, medical, everywhere. And when I graduated from McKinsey, I joined IC Lauder in New York, and I led global transformation. One of the biggest projects for us was how do you think about solving our inventory problem, right? And we aligned from innovation to product to marketing to finance to supply chain. And at the end of the day, it's about how do we use data to do demand forecast better. And we find data we never thought we have. We launched the AI. But I think most importantly is how do we train the demand planners to use it. Right? At the beginning, everyone was scared. They might scare the planners. But at the end of the day, I think everyone was welcoming it. Like the consultants who believe they will not lose their job, right? And today, I think in LVMH, we are the largest company for luxury. We adopted a lot of traditional AI. I think for us, it's not 70-30, it's probably for us, I would say 80-20. We are more on the traditional side today. We use AI to think about how do we, demand planning problem, that's one. How do we think about clients, right? How do we think about improving our client journey? How do we target client better in performance marketing? And we started now thinking about how do we use AI in human-to-human interactions, right? I think when you talk about Gen AI today, it's really further broadening AI from the industries to you and I, to the human beings living an everyday life of all the therapy help everyone's getting, right? So for us, Gen AI is coming into our client interaction. How do we use, Gen AI to better outreach, to better serve our clients? So it is pretty much real for, as long as I was working, yeah.
Thank you, Len. So one of the things that we see let us start with the top of the framework, the strategic roadmap. Okay, you have a complex organization, 75 different maisons, scatters across the world in different types of industries as well, right? You have luxury, you have jewelry, you have hospitality. How do you guys see and define this strategic roadmap? How do you think about performance foundations, or do you, in the first place? And what are some of the learnings you can have and to share with us here?
I think if you know LVMH, we are a very decentralized organization. As you mentioned, we have 75 maisons. It's 75 because we stopped counting. It's actually more than 75. And then our maisons are around 4 major categories. So you have fashion-leather goods, we have Louis Vuitton, Dior, and we have Celine, Laura Piana. And then the second category is watch and jewelry, where you have Tiffany, Bulgari, Charmaine, and so on and so forth. The third category is really around beauty, right? So Dior Beauty, Guerlain, and we have a lot of beauty houses. And we have retail. So we own DFS, we own Sephora, which been our pure retailer branch. And as you mentioned, we also have the Bulgari Hotel and the Vermont. We are a very decentralized organization from the top down, right? We're very decentralized in Paris. We're very decentralized in China. But at the group level, to drive AI, I think for us, it's important to focus on 2 things. Number one is really around the application area, right? Whether you call it processes or is it, use cases. For us, it's really important to start from the most impactful area. We don't pick tangential areas to try it to see if it works. It's kind of a waste of time. For us, we identify the key areas that AI will have the most impact, whether it's creatives, right? Whether it's product design, supply chain, clienteling, and there's also, for example, e-commerce. So we identify the most impactful areas to apply AI, and we want to make sure all of our maisons understand, let's not waste time to see if it works. Let's just put it in the most impactful area and start working. I think the second thing is really around data governance, which is very, very important because for luxury industry, our clients entrusted us with all of their data and their wallet, So I think, the client data is the most important asset to us, right? So we don't just share it with anyone. We are actually very restrictive in terms of how do we share client data. Of course, everything needs consent. We have to protect the data with the most energy, right? So for us, it's to identify what are the technology that can help us secure that data, what are the policies in terms of data governance, ownership, and sharing. And 3 is really around what are the business processes to make sure that we use the data the right way to create the most impact, right? Even for AI and Gen AI, I think our group lead the maisons in terms of identifying which large language model is for us. And it's not only based on performance. It's also, where do we get the most secure model? right? So we don't leak the data. We have the trust layer. So that's really important. And it doesn't make sense to do it at the Amazon level. It's really important to invest and look at it at the group level.
Len, which one of the functions or the domains, not to say performance foundations, you have actually made the biggest progress, in the last couple of years?
I think globally we have made a lot of progress on supply chain. We have made actually, to your surprise, a lot of progress on creatives, right? Because you think about all these amazing dreams that we create, we need tools to support that. At the market level, I think we made the most progress in clienteling, right? So we improved conversion 3-4 times with AI. We are driving a lot of our major campaigns, our events, with data and AI.
On the scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you guys are on the journey for AI adoption? And what have been the challenges you guys have faced along the way?
I think, as I mentioned, we are very decentralized, so we don't have one score, right? But it's actually hard to measure every Amazon. Let's just use clienteling as an example. So we have Amazons, who are focused on very, very niche clients. So every client advisor maybe have 30 clients. So they don't really need AI, right? Like they can remember the 30 clients by name. They've been to their home. They know their kids. They know, their family. I don't think AI can really help a lot. So we don't even ask them to do anything AI, right? But we also have big Amazons, right? The number one, house of luxury. That where some stores, one client advisor might have thousands of clients. So that's where we apply AI to help them to remember those clients, especially people who maybe visited once, maybe they visited once, didn't buy. How do we invite them back for the better experience? So I think for us, it's really about, again, pushing the most impactful area and to avoid this, if you have a hammer, everything is a nail syndrome, right? So we want to make sure that we find the hammer for the right nail, right? And I think overall, our company is very much embracing AI, but we call it the quiet AI, so we call it augmented intelligence, so that, because we're very much still selling the dream. We're really building client relationships, and that's still a human job, unless one day our clients become robots, right? But so far, we're still, human clients. So for us, it's to drive quiet AI to make sure that we enable our frontline, we enable, our creators to do it.
You operate in China, right? And China is a really big market for LVMH. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of push towards, changes or regulatory changes on the environment around data, around how you actually drive AI. Within your current role, how do you actually kind of or how have you dealt with that, evolution in terms of landscape? And what are some of the advice you can have for executives that will have similar challenges in their own companies?
Yeah, so I manage APAC, but a lot of my time was spent in China and Korea. And those two markets probably have the most strict data regulation, right? As you mentioned, the authority has been a major force to drive for localization. But besides the government, I think there are two other forces that's driving for localization. I think one is actually the clients. We don't believe the clients want their data everywhere, right? We don't believe the client come to buy in the Shanghai store, they want their data, in Singapore, for example, right? Sorry, I love Singapore. But I think that's the second drive force. The third one, probably which is the most important one, is actually the business needs to localize, right? If you think about China, you think Korea, you think about Taiwan, Japan. For example, we all have very different digital ecosystem. In China, we have, Alibaba, Tencent, and you have Line, you have Kakao. So actually, every single ecosystem capture data differently, right? So it's important for the business to actually localize the data and AI, because we actually, the algorithm is actually different because the data is different, because the ecosystem is different, right? In China, for example, we have a lot richer data than Paris because the Googles of the world doesn't give you too much data, but we have, everyone's union ID, for example, for WeChat. So the way we use data is quite different. So I think localization is super important. In the last couple of years, we have completed the journey of China localization. So we localized the system, the data, the AI, and the talent, right? And I think we need to do more for markets like Korea, US. I feel we love globalization, but data somewhat has to live locally and AI the same way.
Maybe last question for you, Lan. If you think about where you are today, and the ambition that you have for the group on digital and AI, how big is the gap between where you are, where you want to go, and what will be, frankly, the biggest levers, right, or unlocks to actually get there?
I think the question actually comes back to localization. I feel we have made tremendous progress at the global level. We need to, the biggest gap is actually coming to market, right? So to coming to the different campaigns in China versus the US, how do we really make the AI more impactful? Because today we send the high potential clients generated by AI to a market, they will be like, who are those people, But because we trained everyone the same way, and we train the data, we train the AI using the global algorithm, we didn't use the local algorithm. So I think the biggest gap for us today and where we need to improve on is really around localizing that.
Lan, thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for bearing with us for the last 20 minutes.
Thank you, Alex.
Panel session of today's presentation. I would like to invite to the stage Edgar Cho, co-founder and managing partner of Spark Labs Taipei, Taiwan's leading incubator. Chris So, the GM of the Partner and Startup Program at AWS. Mo Abdullah, the VP of Customer Engineering for APAC. And Yaron Haviv, the co-founder and CTO of Inguazio, a machine learning platform that was acquired by McKinsey and Company. So I'll have them come on stage and also have them do a quick introduction by themselves. Today's session will be moderated by Edgar. So I'm looking forward to a fantastic discussion on how technology service providers can really help tackle a lot of the challenges that we see in adopting AI and rolling out into enterprise.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's our pleasure to be here to share the insights. I think everyone is right now talking about AI, but how is that AI really helping the companies? I think everyone is very eager to learn about how our big companies can be, adopting AI. So, just a quick question, how many of you are from corporate side? Okay. How many of you is from investor side? How many of you from startup side? Okay, we got some. So just quickly doing the self-intro, I'm Edgar Chu, the founder and managing partner of Spark Labs Taiwan. So we are a VC accelerator and helping startups to expand globally. Before doing Spark Labs, we actually founded a company. We did a caller ID service called Who's Call. And we started in 2012, and within 18 months, our company got acquired by Naver, the largest search engine company from South Korea. So I get to experience how big companies move, and also how startups try to grow. And Earlier this year, we invested in a company called MedAI together with NVIDIA. And we are also helping Qualcomm to run their corporate accelerators. So, I mean, like from today's panel, I definitely want to get the best part out from all these three amazing speakers. So without further ado, I just want our speakers to give a quick intro about what you've been doing and also like your background.
Start with me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Edgar. I'm Chris from AWS. So I'm not sure you guys familiar about AWS, right? So indeed, it's a cloud business unit under Amazon. So the company has been up and running for close to 20 years. So we born since 2006, led by a small team under Andy Jassy, the current CEO of Amazon, to really start the business at that time. So time flies. Right now, we grow to a certain size of the business, and with 108 billion annual run rate business under AWS, and serving millions of customers around the world. So I manage the partner and also startup ecosystem for Greater China under AWS.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mo. I lead the technology team in Asia Pacific for Google. I'm based in Singapore, been here about 2 years or so. And in that role, I get the chance to work with an amazing number of customers. Similar to Chris, we work with them on projects in AI, data, and so on and so forth. And we cover everywhere from China, Japan, India, and so on and so forth. Before that, in this 27-year career in IT, I was at Amazon as well for about 4.5 years, a long tenure at IBM, and I co-founded a startup which was in the beginning of doing infrastructure AI automation. So this is a space very exciting for me.
Thank you. I'm Yaron. I'm a tech entrepreneur, multiple roles as VP and CTO in technology. One of my roles was heading a data center and innovation in Mellanox, which is now part of NVIDIA. And I see a lot of their products here. I formed a company called Iguazi, which was acquired by McKinsey for operationalizing AI. I do also keynote speeches, and I wrote an interesting book recommended for operationalizing machine learning and MLOps for enterprise. In McKinsey, I work with the top clients on how to operationalize, scale their business, address all the challenges around AI, risks, and so on.
Cool. I think like for all the startups, that definitely for onboarding cloud is like definitely Google or AWS, and also like we got a panelists that who really done the startup and also right now move to corporate to how to like support not just startup to grow but also helping corporate to adopt like AI. So today's topic, I think definitely is more about how we can emphasize like by adopting AI into corporates. So the first question I got is what would you consider is the most critical conditions for AI adoption or application to be impactful and also to be successful? Do you have any examples that you can give it out? So maybe we can start from Chris.
Sure. Yeah, so I can go with the easy one. I think all the speakers already talked about this. Indeed, I manage quite a lot of, engage with quite a lot of startup companies, around the region. And many of them, they are not really facing this kind of problem. So the major challenge, I would say, is still about the data silo issue in the corporate world. But on startup world, right, so they basically start their business from the cloud and make a centralized and a single source of true data platform since day one. So there's no longer a problem for startup to really adopt AI and innovate on top of data. So in the corporate world, what we know is, I think, going forward, all the business case and application deploy in place, it actually create quite a lot of technical debt, right? So there's a data silo, different system handle different tasks and so on. So that make corporate really difficult to consolidate a single software tool with a single data platform to support AI innovation, right? So I think in AI, without data, I think it's just a ChatGPT, right? So your ChatGPT has no difference with others' ChatGPT, right? So in that case, your data is really the differentiator. I think give an example about Amazon, right? So Len talked about the supply chain. I think Amazon, inside Amazon, 99% of our supply chain now is being automated by machine learning and AI, right? So we ship maybe millions of items per day, 100 millions of items per day. All this item forecast supply chain is managed by our AI platform. So we need all the sales data, all the external conditional data being consolidated and feed into the AI system and really do a really high accuracy predictive forecast for our fulfillment center and entire supply chain. Right? Indeed, we are very sophisticated and I'm really able to manage a good turnover on our supply chain, entire supply chain system. So that require a sophisticated centralized data platform. And inside Amazon, I think that data platform is, the daily changes is talking about, terabyte up to zettabyte level of changes, right? That is really fundamental about, cloud pick. You need to be to innovate on top of your data towards the AI application adoption.
Well, what's your view?
Yeah, so maybe to answer the question, Edgar and wonderful colleagues here, I'll put it in the context of the projects, what we've seen in real life and we learned. So as of using the terminology earlier, thousands of processes, and on Monday we completed our 100,000th use case project just in the Asia Pacific region. So many, many customers. And arguably, Google is the largest user of AI in the world. We use it in every facility. When I look across these 100,000 use cases and what we internally do in Google, there are three things that have stood out, whether you're a startup or a large enterprise, that really made a difference. The first one is exactly what Chris mentioned, which is those who have made it, they immediately made the connection between AI and data. They did not do data next. They did not think of it as an afterthought. They understood what is the style of data they need, what's the quantity of data they need, so that it doesn't cause many cost issues. They understood how to get the data so that it's secure and so on and so forth. So absolutely agree with Chris on number one. The other two are actually a little bit more interesting in my opinion. The second one is they are rethinking the system of interaction. A lot of what we're used to is chat. And while chat has its place, it's very much evolving. It's no longer the dominant way that we actually interface with technology. So if you look at something like Notebook LM, hopefully everybody has tried Notebook LM. If you have not, I highly recommend you do it. But Notebook LM, you go into it, you upload an asset. That asset is a document. Without a single click of a button, you're now able to actually get a mind map of that topic, and you can actually get a podcast that helps you understand and consume that information in a better way. So the system of interaction changed. You're not saying, I'm giving you a document, it's about a tax, let me know what it is. Now you can ask it questions. So the system of interaction, whether it's in a Notebook LM, or if you look at Whisk, you now upload an image. Now you can imagine in a luxury brand, you just put an image and say, hey, I would like to look like this. Here is an image of me. Give me a comparator and advice. You no longer are chatting. So changing the way you do the system of interaction is the second thing that we've observed helping differentiate and distinguish those who succeed with AI. The third one, Edgar, and I think this is unfortunately something people are thinking of a little bit late, is AI is now affecting your brand, your image. You go and interact with AI and you get rubbish results or you get something, and suddenly your brand is affected. So a lot of times people are not interacting with their AI providers with the lens of security, copyright, how do you protect the output? When you shift models, how does your model continue to behave to the same standard you want? So automating a lot of these things become important. So this notion that we've done, for example, in Google on indemnification, which means the output of the model is one we would guarantee and we would not pass the responsibility, has been one of the critical things that we've worked with multiple brands around the world as they use AI.
Thanks. So I'll separate it to organizational and technological challenges. I think the biggest challenge we see is organizational, is that we need executive sponsorship to make things happen. If it's just driven by technologists or low-level or people with more innovation in the organization without the endorsement of top leadership, CEO, and so on, it doesn't really work. It does require some changes across the organization. We talked about data access. We need to break boundaries between different departments to get data into those applications and so on. So the biggest challenge for success is first to get the organization ready and an endorsement from top executive. The technological ones is you have to think about AI for production. We see too many clients going, downloading stuff, building a nice prototype. It's great, it's interesting, it doesn't get to production. 90% or 80% of those playgrounds, they don't see the light of day. And that requires a fundamental change in thinking think about production, think about how you build the infrastructure to continuously deploy those applications, how to interact with data assets from the enterprise, with APIs that you have, how to pass security, how to avoid hallucinations, how to keep on improving your application, how to monitor if it's hallucinating or if it's violating some policies or brand, culture and so on. So these things have to be ironed out. It requires building a platform across the organization with regulations, with sort of all the management around it, and having departments build applications on top of it. Instead of looking at it as a siloed approach that a certain department says, oh, you know what, let's build an AI use case. We do it, we don't govern it, there's no security, there's no control, and so on, and it just fails immediately after that.
I want to follow on your answers. So you just mentioned about like the best timing when the company is ready to adopting AI. So how will we evaluate that a company already been ready to implement AI and also in a meaningful way? Is there any like index or factors that, or like preparation before get the AI applications?
So to continue on my point is, first we need the organization to be structured and for that. Having the ability to, we have this notion of hub and spoke model, certain central elements around IT to do the governance and aspects like that, other technologies within the application, endorsement of the CEO and so on. That's the first part organization. And the second thing is data. If they don't have sort of a data lake or a way or a data bus or something like that, that they can easily interact with data assets across the organization, it won't work because as my colleagues mentioned, without data, AI is just an LLM that understands natural language. But what is all those agents and LLMs? It's taking a natural textual element, converting it into an API that talks to data or some other service, returns the answers, converts it back to text. So without this interface to those data assets and an easy way to control, for example, access, security. If someone generates a question, I have to be able to pass his credentials, to authenticate against the data assets and so on. So if we don't have the facilities to have sort of a data bus, again, it won't work.
Yeah, I think definitely like before adopting AI, we definitely need a company to gather more data that you can analyze or do some prediction. So like in Asia, a lot of companies haven't really digitized the companies, whether it's like sales flow or a lot of like business operation, it's still like analog. So I think there's definitely tons of opportunities to get a company digitized. So you can not just record everything, but it's like the user journey or the client journey, you could be with data, with a data set. So you can train this kind of predictions on top of this kind of pre-trained information. That I think that's actually the first step. But the second step is that how you can connect, whether it's through APIs or through some kind of the application. I think that's the second step because a lot of companies, they don't have AI engineers in-house. And that comes to like the challenges for companies to adopting AI. You have no one knows how to use that. You have no one that can, like read the documents, read this kind of updated like API documents. So definitely there's tons of challenges. Any views on you two, like seeing like when would be the best timing for a company to really adopting AI?
So I think we're not yet at a point where we have, at least from my point of view, formalized what I would call to as the readiness or the maturity model. I think there are some ideas around that. I think Lance said something really very important. The adoption of AI is not a new phenomena that was born when ChatGPT came to life. It's been going on for decades. The difference is that we now have made AI much more ready and accessible to many more people to take advantage of it. Think of it as the coding days. In the coding days, you need to do computer science and do things, and coding was inaccessible. But then you reach the point where you have low-code, no-code platforms, and people can innovate as an insurance agent can actually create creative workflows or new contracts or so on. The same thing is happening with generative AI. The readiness side, I think, is exactly what we heard earlier, which is, do you have people who understand how to leverage AI? Do you have people who have the skills to understand the difference? And I'm not talking about, do you know what a RAG is and so on, because that's actually too low level and so on, and we're past that particular point. Do you know how to govern a change? Let me give you an example. You can write an application, and I guarantee you, based on my humble experience, that you're going to get to quality that you need. The 80% quality you need is going to probably achieve in the first 10% of the cycle. But then to get it to the next 100% quality you want, you're going to spend tons of money and tons of time and tons of everything. Because it just is much harder to actually make it 100% accurate. So an experienced AI, a ready organization, knows how to distinguish these two things. They'll say, the LLM and my thing will give me about 80, 90%. Now I have to integrate this with a data source that is the source of truth, my own records, my so on, and understand how to combine. That's a skill set around how to actually deliver AI in a way that meets your requirements. Those are the differences, I think. Maturity and readiness, you should just try. My humble opinion is go in, try, learn, and experiment, and don't wait.
Yeah, pretty much echo on that, right? So there's no best time than now, right? So there's no complex algorithm, for one day you can just, take and you're up on AI world, right? So it has to go through this process. So consolidate the data, make the data ready, right? So go through the security compliance process, align with the business need and really put in action, right? So it has to go through the journey. I think if you look back 2 years before, if you need to build a customer service or internal RAG chatbot, it requires complex of process, right? Could be spent, couple $100 to really get started. Now it's much easier, right? So it could be just 10% of the original cost. You can get started with something, but again, you have to get through this foundation, make it ready to really kickstart. And at the end of the day, we should try to aim on first mover advantage rather than wait for that things getting perfect.
I mean, first mover advantage for me, since Spotlight Taiwan, we've invested in around 70 companies. And Spotlight Group, we are also the direct investor in OpenAI and also investor of Anthropic. So a lot of time when I take these startups or AI solutions to corporates, first of all, all the CTOs will be against adopting AI. I think a lot of challenges might be, they are worried about how would their jobs gonna be secured. Is there any view, before we get into adopting AI, is there any views that how CTOs can really be well prepared, or how should they face regarding challenges for their existing operations, or how can they really be open-minded on top of adopting AI? Any views?
You want to go first?
Okay, I'll start. I think when the internet came, all the stores, the brick and mortar stores, everyone said, everything will shop online. We see still a lot of malls, a lot of stores, and it's really about the augmentation of how you have your experience coming from the online advertisement and so on, and then someone that wants to feel the shirt and buy it. And I think the same is with AI. I think AI is not necessarily going to replace everything. It's like a turbo boost. It's like a tool. Certain things that were annoying and you did, manually, now you have some chat or some bot that will do that for you, generate content, generate outlines, and so on. But you still need to think about the creativity. You still need to integrate everything to customer experience and so on. So what we'll see is a shift in work trends. Less sort of monotonic tasks that could be automated, more on the creativity. Some jobs will be diverted to, yoga teachers and psychologists to deal with the depression and so on. So not everything will be addressed by AI.
I think, if you look at 90th centuries, right? So internet born at that time, right? So people still pretend to use mail instead of email, right? So there's some people still lag behind the market, but technology will drive this entire market going forward, right? So leading by many of the leading tech firms, right? So we believe AI is another revolution equal or bigger than internet, right? So, there's some people will lead on this way, and some customer will onboard in this path, and some people will lag behind, right? In the reality, it's still going to be that journey. We believe in that direction.
I think there are three types of these CTOs that I have come to. I used to be one in my own startup, so I will just relate to this. I've lived all three personalities. So there's obviously those who are very visionary. And so they're typically disrupting their own startup and trying to put AI because they believe that that will give them a commercial edge, a user experience edge, or so on. You don't worry about those because they typically are there thinking. The only thing you worry about is, can they keep changing their mind? So how do you actually create a stability around stick with something and do it? Then you have the people who are in between wait and see, and they typically will do experimentation, so on, as we saw in the data you shared. And a lot of them will eventually be driven by the users and or by competition to actually drive some of that. So the market forces will often help those CTOs move. Then there is the third type, which is the one you're referring to. And they're like, AI, shmai, I don't know what you're talking about. This is not real for me. And what I found is the most useful thing is the following. Please raise your hand if you think that your organization has enough people, that you have too many people working in your team. Nobody. Nobody ever comes and says, I don't have enough headcount. Nobody ever says, I don't have enough resources. And what I found with a lot of those CTOs, is if you're able to introduce to them the notion of augmented AI, as we heard earlier, which is ways in which AI can make you more productive and make it very simple and easy and not threatening, they will succeed. I'll give you an example. We heard about Lily earlier on, which is from McKinsey. In my own team, so I only do Asia Pacific. My team is not ginormous. But we're getting calls from customers every day saying, hey, we would love to work with Google. I, just like everybody else, have a finite number of AI experts that I can put out there to work. Part of my team does prototyping. They'll come, they'll sit down, they'll do hands-on with customers. But I don't have enough of them. So what did I do? We took the innovations that we have in the AI and we created a prototyping engineering team. So on my team, we have 8 prototyping AI agents. When we go to a project, we deploy the AI agents. They do the landing zone, they do the configuration, they do your identity and access, and they took away more than 40% of the time that it took one of my prototypers to do. So we integrated them into the software lifecycle. That type of use case with a CTO, who typically is responsible for delivery, works. Can I do test case automation? Sorry, I'm going to take one more because you pressed a very exciting button for me. How many of your developers are stuck not being able to code new things because they're refactoring code or they're working on bugs? Well, what's one of the most successful things that we see in AI relative to coding? It's test case automation. It is actually moving your old Java to your new Java so you're not stuck doing that for months and you can focus on innovation. So it's finding those use cases, Edgar.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for a company, right after they start to adapt AI, I think the next challenge will be when it comes to scaling. How would you consider is the pitfall for the common pitfall for the corporates when they try to right after adopting AI but try to scale AI? And can you give us some of the solutions or migrations that are needed in order to prevent that kind of situation happen? Yaron?
The question, how do you scale? Or you can start, Chris.
So I think one of the things that we see that, for example, you have a use case in customer care about a chatbot that sort of interacts with the client. So it's one use case. Another use case, for example, could be to analyze existing client calls and extract information in order to understand what they're complaining about certain products and so on. Now, all those applications essentially work with the same data. And one can generate data. For example, you have a recorded set of calls of a client interaction. You could take this recorded set of calls and use it to train, to fine-tune a model to have a more personalized kind of chat. So I think what you should look at it as not as individual cases, but rather as a bus of applications, where on one end you have those data assets, agents, microservices, and so on. On the other end, you have applications that interact, whether it's through voice, through chat, through audio, video, and so on. But don't look at it as how do I build an individual use case. Think of it of how you build this bus. And as part of this bus, think about all the different aspects. For example, how do you test? How do you do upgrades when systems are up? How do you verify that you're not hallucinating? We're going to talk a minute about multi-agent and so on. How do you generate trust across multi-agents? These are tough challenges. One of the interesting applications that we've seen is actually using Gen AI to pre-process data. Because you're not going to just go and read a video every time a client asks a question. So the general idea is to take all the data assets that you have, run Gen AI on top of them to generate metadata, and that meta is indexed in a structured way that this chat interface will be able to immediately access that metadata instead of processing a video every time you ask a question.
I think if I would think about it from a mental model or so on around scaling, I would say that there is one thing that is common to everybody, whether you're a startup or an enterprise, and there are some things that are unique to both. So if we think about it, what's common to everybody? The number one reason that, and I'm going to just focus on the technology lens in here that affects the whole business, is that people are building AI-based applications and incurring technical debt very quickly. What do I mean by that? A lot of the customers I work with, they started with one model. Let's say, for example, OpenAI. Then they discover that there's another model that is better for something else. Then a third model that's better for a third thing. Now what they're doing is that they're creating an abstraction layer in their applications to try and talk to these different models. And the first thing they've done is now they created something that they have to maintain and sustain. The next thing they've done is that they created their own pipelines and tools to do exactly what we just talked about, which is when I move from version to version, is the model behaving, not behaving, did it go better or not? Well, guess what? A lot of this stuff now is being built in platforms that abstract that for you. In Google, inside of Google, we have more than 212 models that we use. When you go and use Google Maps, you are using more than 41 models behind the scenes. Do you think that the Google Maps developers are sitting and inventing their own framework and so on? Absolutely not. They use something called the Vertex AI platform. Why? It plugs any model in the world, with the exception of OpenAI. Not because Google doesn't want it, it's because OpenAI doesn't want to put it in there. But every other model in the world is inside of this platform. Whether it's Llama, Sonnet, whatever you want is there, so that I don't have to worry. So number one common thing is, do not create your own custom capabilities that are going to become redundant over time. This is the same as the Red Hat story. When we first got Linux, everybody was creating their own ways of managing Linux, and then somebody like Red Hat came and said, I'll simplify the maintenance, I'll simplify the distribution, I'll simplify all of that. That's common. Now with startups, scale means something different than an enterprise. In a startup, if you are DeepSeek, how many people know DeepSeek? Okay. So you're DeepSeek. Suddenly everybody wants to play with DeepSeek. What does scale mean? Is that I have many, many more people using me. Well, what's my inhibitor for scale at this point? Cost. It's cost. I'm sinking a lot of money into this infrastructure. And the inference cost, as Edgar described. So we worked very closely with DeepSeek. They, of course, leverage a lot of the NVIDIA GPUs and so on that we collaborate with them. But we also introduced TPU to them. Because TPUs have a 40% lower cost of inference. That's how Google does it. That's how we're able to have the cheapest models in the world. Why? Because we use a combination of infrastructure. So in a startup, you have to think about your underlying infrastructure. You have to understand how do you serve, what do you do caching, how do you do caching. So it's actually very technically deep because you're acquiring more users at lower cost. At enterprises, that formula is a little bit different because sometimes you may be renting those resources. You're not building your own big model. You may be using a small model. Scaling is all about how you simplify integration and automate more of the workflow. So I'll give you an example. By the way, Facebook, for example, uses Gemini internally. Why? About 80% of the effort that goes into social media content moderation is all about, did I see this content? How do I infer the words, etc.? And have I actually remove this user before, yes or no. By actually automating an agent, they now have much more content moderators who are inside of their systems doing it, using things like Gemini models, etc. And I'll just close with something lastly. Take a gaming company like Nexon. Why do you think number one reason why people leave a game, other than if the game is horrible? I mean, if the game is good, people keep playing it. But the number one reason not related to the game is that people feel that they are being bullied in the game. It's toxicity. You know, they feel like they're playing and somebody pulls at them. How do you now create real-life ability to adopt these users by introducing real-time security and safety in a game like that? Well, that is about scaling your actual business processes. So I think of it as technology plus process and automating as much. Sorry, that was a long answer, but I hope it was helpful.
So I basically echo back to
at this stage, have country.
Okay. Hello.
The
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I basically echo back to the data compliance, right? So recently I worked with many enterprise-grade customers, and indeed they have a strong executive sponsor and really putting the AI usage case in place, and developing, moving forward on that direction. But they have to work back because they're facing some of the data compliance issue, right? So difficult to orchestrate, what kind of role, what kind of specific data for particular user, internal or external, they can access, right? That actually triggered quite a lot of problem for enterprise data governance, right? That is really fundamental if you want to build a sophisticated AI ecosystem inside the organization and scale forward. I think many enterprise customers now, they look back and really look at all the foundation about data labeling, role-based access model, basically the entire data security and governance framework they need to build in place. That is really the fundamental if you want to build a production-grade AI use cases. That's what I want to say. Right, that's the first priority I would suggest all the enterprise to look at. Another thing I really echo the multi-agent choices, right? So because agent now is evolving, I mean the large language model is evolving extremely fast, right? DeepSeek is outpacing, OpenAI and each other. They are outpacing each other on daily basis, right? Maybe 1 or 2 months later, there's another new generation of version that is going to be this, and more intelligent, outpaced, PhD level scientists and so on. It is important you need to build up an orchestration layer to, adopt the foundation model based on the business needs, right? So for us, right? So recently we launched a customer service under Amazon, right? So if you shop on Amazon app or website, if you got some problem of the shipping or the product or damage, you can just chat with the AI, right? So it is provide a really quick response, with your order, item, you can just choose and pick, and then identify the problem, and within 1 or 2 minutes time, you can get a solution, right? Could be a replacement job, pick up the item from your home or wherever you drop the item or some service center or that kind of arrangement, right? That provide an extremely good customer experience rather than wait for 30 minutes for customer, real person customer service. I think that require back to the foundation of the data, governance, how you can, particular user, how they can interact on their own data set, right? So without any breaches, right? So that is really fundamental of the data governance and, leverage the multi-choice of the large language model, right? Choose and pick based on what the business need to really, to choose the best price performance and right large language model for particular use case. That's important as well.
Yeah, and I think like AI agents nowadays has become like a new frontier for a lot of companies. So what do you think that the company need to have in place today in order to adopting this AI agent at scale? What kind of the breakthroughs that needed that might, along the way that when we want to adopt that, what kind of the breakthrough that we needed?
Yeah, agentic, I think this year we call agent of the year, right? So previously we call like Gen AI, interaction, ChatGPT, that kind of things. This year we see quite a lot of use case happening with agent. And I think going forward is going to be agentic agent system, right? So I mean agentic AI system, right? With multiple agents collaborate with each other. That is important. And I think one really particular breakthrough we need to have is the orchestration layer for multi-agent. And nowadays, I think different tech companies use different protocols, right? So for us, we really embrace with the MCP model, right? So model context protocol, and quite a lot of tech vendors actually on board to this open standard as well. So basically, we can rely on this MCP approach. You can plug and play with different kind of stuff from large language model and also enterprise system as well. So agentic AI is going to be need to integrate with your systems, right? To really generate the automation or real productivity improvement inside your organization. So a orchestration layer is extremely important, and the practice of integrate with the enterprise-grade system is also extremely important. I think nowadays not many of the internal enterprise system are API-based. So, but going forward, I think that's the journey. For new type of enterprise application is going to be on board with MCP or API-based of approach and make it integrate as a orchestration layer to integrate with each other. So I would say agentic AI system is going to be the trend.
I want to follow on that. So since nowadays that AI agents that grow, evolving very fast, do you suggest that the company should build their own AI agents or just rely on third party?
I mean, the agent process itself should be customized inside the organization, right? Based on the business need, the business logic. But there's quite a lot of tools and platforms available in the market. So for us, I think we have a Amazon Bedrock orchestration layer. We provide multiple choices of large language model, whatever what we just mentioned from our own Amazon Nova family, DeepSeek, Llama model, or Anthropic Sonnet 3.7, for example, right? So you basically rely on your business need to choose the right large language model, but it also comes with the agent system. You can build on customize different agent for particular business process, and there's an orchestration layer to help you to distribute different tasks across all the right. So that there's quite a lot of good platform, good agentic system available in the market, but inside agent process, it has to be customized throughout your business process. Right?
So first, we see a lot of innovation. We have MCP that was mentioned. There's Google A2A, which is really trying to standardize the ability to integrate multiple agents together. I still have a lot of concerns with all of those things around trust issues. Okay, I'm passing something to an agent. How do I know it really provided the right answer? How do I make sure it doesn't violate security, data privacy, and other aspects? I'm not sure it's fully covered in the new frameworks. And that's the main concerns we have. We develop use cases, so we interface to agents. Some of them are agents that we build based on a specific use case, specific data of the client or APIs to his system. Some of it is trying to leverage what the industry already built. But we do provide sort of a bus that allows us to, for example, authenticate the user, understand what is allowed to do, pass the security context, and so on, to make sure that we're not doing the wrong thing. And also providing a layer that will evaluate the answers, verify that it's not violating anything. We talked about different techniques of doing that using knowledge bases and other verification, and also monitoring of all those activities. I'm still a little afraid of multi-agent technology, of just letting it run loose. This guy talks to this guy, talks to this guy, they generate some aggregate answer. But I think this is where technology need to head, is address the trust and security and control layer on top of those multi-agents.
I think on, you asked two parts. One, how do you scale? And number two, about how will agents happen? So 4 quick points. The first one is, I think, I actually believe very strongly that the question won't be whether people will choose to build agents or buy agents, because people will get both, whether they like it or not. If you use Salesforce, you're going to get an agent. It's going to be served to you. So you're going to have agents available to you. You're going to be able to buy highly specialized agents that perform a certain task, like recruitment or so on. There's a startup we're working with. I'm just amazed at what their agent is able to do, frankly. A combination of conversational AI, integrations, and a strong training that they have done. It's fairly impressive around its job matching and so on. You think that you're interacting with a pseudo-real human, and then there's a human behind it. And then you will absolutely need to build your own, because there will moments, as Chris described, where you want to do things in a local market, in your own environment, and so on, that are unique to go. So it's going to be a multi-agent world in a multi-style world. I do agree that the 3 elements that make agents scale are the following. The first one is, you must establish the language for agents to speak. That's 2-tier. Tier number 1 is MCP, which is like the TCP IP of agent communications. The second one is the agent-to-agent that we just talked about. Agent-to-agent, Microsoft just signed up to it. Everybody's signing up to it. That actually is an abstraction layer that understands the handshake, what's the security protocol, and addresses a lot of these types of things that we are concerned about. So that's your number 1. Sign up into an agent-to-agent framework, because that platform, protocol, allows you to know that a service now can talk to Salesforce, can talk to a Google agent or an Atlassian agent very securely in an established way. So that's number 1. Number 2 thing that you need for agent-to-agent is the ability to determine how do you actually insert the decision criteria, known as human in the loop in the old days, but also where is it that you want to put a decision criteria. I'll give you a quick story. At Google, we all use Gmail, of course. So whether we like it or not, we got an agent in Gmail. So before they introduced the agent, they did a survey at Google. Said, how many people take minutes in their meetings? And there was a number that was done. It was high. Like, you're having a meeting, you want to take minutes, owners, and actions, right? Notes of the meetings, etc. Great. And the second part of the question was, well, how many people feel like they're following up on those actions effectively? And it was a lower number. Then the agent came. And we now all have this agent. After I finish a meeting, I get my meeting notes. It recognizes the voices in the room. And it says, Mo said this, Lan said this, Edgar said this, Chris said this, and I get it. And they did the survey again. And they said, how many people are now taking minutes? And people said more, because now they're just getting it for free. But then when they asked how many people feel like they're effectively following up on it, the number actually didn't change. So think about it. If we're in a meeting and we say, Edgar or Mo, you're taking the meeting notes, I can write them, I can publish them, but if people don't act on them, nothing happens. So what we introduced now in the agents inside of Workspace in Google, for example, is that the agent now can do things like, oh, I see this is a schedule a meeting. Mo to schedule a meeting with Chris and Edgar and follow up on da-da-da. The agent says, do you want me to schedule this for you and put it in the calendar and invite them? Do you want me to find it? And it's automatically doing this. So now we've been doing this for about 6 months, and we're already seeing the results of our survey improve around how many people are acting. So the concept of what you would do is very important. Third thing for scale. So number 1, help agents speak securely and effectively. Number 2, when you design your agents, design them for action, not just for information. Like summarizing and so on is good, but if you never had the organizational behavior capability to act on it, the agent will not change that. So find as much of automation. Number 3, which I think is important, is the ability for the agent to start to become a little bit more sophisticated. A lot of the agents today behave on information in the moment. This is exactly why we just introduced the thinking model. Because a lot of these things agents do, they go over a long time. Like, hey, I'm thinking of doing a trip. Okay, great. What trip are you thinking? I'm thinking about this way. About 5 minutes later, the conversation has changed. That agent needs to have memory. It needs to remember. It needs to be able to reason and converse. And this is exactly why, if you look at search, when you're doing deep search, research in search, it changed. Before you would say, tell me when is the best time to visit blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, if you put it in research mode, it will tell you, tell me when is the best time for me to do blah, blah, blah. The model will come back and ask you a question. Say, are you asking me because you're trying to plan a trip, or are you asking me because you're trying to do something else, ship blah, blah, blah? Oh, are you doing it because of this? And now the answer is richer and deeper. Agents have to be there to be able to scale.
Definitely, I think nowadays that for not just for office operations, like those kind of minutes note takers, or even like RPA, robot process automation, that you can definitely reduce a lot of manpower and unleash the potential for the mandate to be doing something more meaningful, which like AI couldn't or might take longer time to do it. So is there any like one innovation or one technology that you foresee gonna change the whole like AI era in the next maybe one or 2 years? Is there any like specific one innovation that you think that you're gonna bet on, that gonna make some kind of the revolutionize the whole industry?
So before I name one, I think the three things that I see that are the innovations that are going to happen. One is we talked about agentic and the interface and all the things around it. I think the second one, which is just alluded to, is the notion of hyper-personalization and context awareness, meaning that when you're making the conversation, I know who you are, I know what's the history of your conversation, all the metadata around you and so on. And the third one is around multimodality, the ability to integrate, audio, video, text, images, everything into the same sort of question. Within all of those, I think the caveat is the aspects of risk, trust, safety, hallucination, and so on. So how do I make all those different things work? For example, when I share context across agents, I don't violate security. Or how do I trust the answer of one agent versus the other, and so on. Maybe another side innovation is how to generate structured data from the other one I mentioned was how to generate structured data from all this context that will help me provide better answers, more, I'll give you an example. We went to a client, he had a PDF document, he tried to do RAG. So he's asking a question on the document, and the boss was sort of missing a lot of answers. Instead of doing that, what we did, we pre-processed the document, we extracted a lot of information into tables, and then we built a tool to interface with the table. We got way higher accuracy, because instead of just randomly seeking through associations across the entire document, we got all the data structured into a table and just got the exactly correct answer. So those are the things I think will be important for adoption.
I think there are three. We're not answering your question. You keep saying one thing, but I'll give you three quickly because there's a long list. And I'll do that very, very quickly. So the three I'm very excited about are, one is 100% on reasoning. I really encourage people to go out and please try this thinking model that's out there. It's on Google DeepMind. You can look at it and see how the research mode works and so on. Because reasoning is going to become a truly phenomenal enabler for agentic to go from just simple augmentation to actually sophisticated augmentation. That's number one. Number two is the agentic platforms. And I do think that today, by the way, it's not the new frontier or happening. If you go to an airline like Indigo in India, we already have delivered for them multi-agents. So when your flight gets disrupted, there's an agent that does the scheduling that actually talks to the agent on the ground at the airport that says, is the pilot and hosts and so on available for that flight and so on, to do all of that coordination. So we're already doing agent to agent. It's the platform which allows these things to scale. The third one, which I haven't spoken about yet, which I'm really, really excited about, I think we're going to have an explosion of this, is generative media. So in the pandemic, I'm sorry I bring this board up because I know it causes trauma for a lot of people. Like, I thought we moved away. All of us indulged on so much movies and TV and everything. We ran out of content. But what has happened in the pandemic is that studios start to create a lot of content. The rise of K-drama and everything is all actually associated with more consumption. But creating content and media is expensive. So there's one lab we're working with, for example, that has a budget of $19 billion a year associated with creating short episodes, 1-minute episodes, and so on and so forth, finding stunts and so on. Generative media, the combo of video, voice, animation, has reached a point now where it is human-like. And there are movies being produced out there that I have seen with my own eyes that are 100% AI generated, that are simplifying, accelerating the process, and showing. All, by the way, with respect to the artists and so on, if they are being involved. In November, if you have a chance to be in Las Vegas, I encourage you to go to the Sphere. You're going to see the Wizard of Oz being completely reimagined. To try and recreate a movie from 1940s for that studio, for Sphere, would have taken them up to 3.5 years. Using generative media, they're able to take it from April and launch it at a Sphere-like screen, minimum cost, no redigital imagining, no re-rendering, nothing, in less than 4 months. That's powerful. Generative media is going to unleash additional artistic, so on. I'm excited about that one.
Pretty much add on that, right? So agentic is probably with the big wave in coming 1 or 2 years, right? So I think, you know, inside Amazon, I think we recently create a agentic, you know, code transformation practice, you know, right on Amazon Q developer and transform 10,000 Java application from 7 to 11 version, right? That take us about a year, right? So, but it's tremendous, right? So saving us like 4,500 years developer times, right? So with you know 200 million more annual saving on that practice. So not only on code transformation, but quite a lot of other practice throughout agent, you know, like vulnerability scanning, test case, documentation, and so on, right? That is, you know, tremendous project inside Amazon, leverage agentic and, you know, the latest large language model to make it happen. I think nowadays the agentic process, I think probably leading by Anthropic Sonnet 3.7, the process they can handle is long last for 1 hour. So for agentic process can long last for 1 hour. Could be very complex, manage your computer to generate an analyze report, right? So that kind of practice can be done. 2 years later, by 2027, it's going to be 1 month long. So the agent can handle complex tasks long last them for 1 month. That is a lot, right? So that will be, you know, a lot of excitement going to happen soon. Other than that, for my startup role, I engage quite a lot of robotic companies, right? So some of them, they are building AI inside the edge, inside the robotic or some of the robotic machines. I think that could be an exciting wave as well.
I definitely want to spend more time like asking you about what would be the underlying AI trend that you haven't discovered, since that a lot of things are maybe overhyped, but a lot of things that haven't been discovered. But I will open for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Is there any questions from the audience that maybe we can do some Q&A? Raise your hand if you have questions to ask.
We'll come over to you.
I'm curious, we talked a lot about some very cool tools. Every business is going to be different, the use cases that work for them. I think something that's interesting to me is thinking about the post-tool build-out. You'll obviously have your initial user base who's really excited, but how do you, like, what are ways that you can drive adoption of that tool, and how do you track it? How do you know what success looks like?
Yeah, I think for us, right, so again, I share a couple cases like customer service. You know, we build agent really addressing particular process, right? So for example, how we can track, you know, the order, what kind of item they order, could be another agent talking about how we can handle the customer service or replacement or whatever kind of action item. I think we build out quite a lot of agent and allow them to interact with each other. But having said that, there's a sophisticated monitoring system right behind and make sure the answer is correct, right, up to the standard. I think inside I mentioned about Amazon Bedrock. There's a gut wheel and security function feature, really able for us to really govern how the agent to react, right? So there's quite a lot of uncertainty or norms talking about the accuracy of the agent. People say that some of them they can be 90 or 95% accuracy. Still, could be a big concern for corporate to produce that kind of agent to serve their customer. But inside our company, I think we have a sophisticated security and monitoring system to make sure, those agents are performing up to our own standard.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. There are two lenses. If you're talking about it in the context of an external tool, there are many things that we advise that you do earlier on around the types of metrics that define success, whether it's the customer rating, engagement time, and so on, that you can all monitor and track and see model to model. So in the case of, for example, Cathay Pacific, they worked with us on a customer engagement suite to try and improve the interactions around, your flight is delayed or your booking and so on. They went through an initial cycle of a lot of adoption and success, and they discovered that much of it was because the answers were a little bit more personalized, a little bit more targeted, a little bit more informative to the problem as opposed to generic. Oh, you have a booking issue, go to link and to this one, so they were serving it. And then they saw a drop. Now, the drop was much more simple metrics, like how many people are using it, how many people are rating it. And when they went back, they realized that they were doing model upgrades to add some additional use cases, but the core use cases that they had served in the earlier days were now actually degrading. So this is where tools like a platform that allows you to understand model-to-model quality comparisons and you build the test cases helps you not have to go back, redo the work, but progressively move forward against business user. So that's external. Internally, if you look at now the platforms available out there, I cannot speak to all of them, but the one that we use inside of Google called Vertex, when you actually put a lot of the content out there, you actually now have simple sliders that allow you to decide what's your threshold on quality, what's your threshold on accuracy, etc., so that you're not hard coding everything you do into the model distillation or model training that you're doing. Because that's the fallacy. You just end up spending a lot of time training and then regrounding and retraining. You just need to create a continuous feedback loop. That's another thing that we found. Define your business metrics correctly, track them, monitor where you are relative to the use cases, original and new, and then build a platform that actually does not cause you to redo a lot of your personalization, grounding, etc., but actually one that progressively moves with you.
So I can divide it into two different layers. The first layer is let's assume you build an agent or a chatbot. You want to evaluate the accuracy of its answers and so on. So what we've done is essentially log all the information, the questions, the answers, the context, and so on. We use other LLMs to monitor, the correctness of those question answers and so on. We introduced something interesting, which we can take the output of that, label it as a data set, and auto-tune the model continuously to keep on reducing the risk, improving the accuracy. This is, by the way, open sourced, and we've introduced it in one of our webinars. The other layer that you want to address is after all those applications need to serve some business KPIs. Increase the happiness of the client, introduce more clients, increase the revenue and so on. So you have to essentially measure the business KPIs associated with that service. Do I really get more customers? Do I really generate more revenue? And so on. So you have to separate the monitoring to two different layers. One is the infrastructure to verify you're not generating risk, toxic answers, and so on, hallucinations. The other one is making sure that it really addresses the business requirements that you had.
I have heard the webinar, by the way, and I recommend it because your own team do a really good job talking about this particular aspect. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the sharings, especially like when would be the best timing to adopt AI? Definitely now. And there's a lot of things that you need to do it before adopting it and also like before scaling it regarding the security level, compliance level, or the data set, whether that's been ready or not. So step by step, but that could be very fast because nowadays, agentic AI has been growing, evolving daily. So I would say like the best timing is definitely now, even though the accuracy has been challenging. But a lot of time that it cannot be just more and more accurate since that a lot of like agents start to think, start to evolve by themselves. So encourage everyone to not just using ChatGPT, but also like adopting more solutions. Thank you so much for the sharing, and hope you enjoyed today's panel. Thank you. Can we get a group photo?
We talked a lot about what's in the here and now, and I would say an important thing is where are we going to be in 5 or 6 years? And if we think about that, who the hell knows? Well, we're going to be somewhere in this span of being from what we heard from our panel, which is around making sure that agents can talk to agents in a way that's secure, and some technical innovations. But it's also power, and it's the amount of leading edge capacity we have. And there's been innovations from folks like DeepSeek that limit that a little bit. But at the end of the day, as fast as we can build power plants and as fast as we can build data centers, we're going to see continued scaling of this technology. So it doesn't really matter which of these tracks we're on. The fact is, as our panelists said at the end there, the time to adopt this technology is now. You have to get it into your organization and start experimenting with it. And I'll just leave you with one thought from Isaac Newton, which is what we know is a drop, which is what we discussed today, but we have no idea what the ocean's going to look like. So keep up with the technology, keep up with the applications of it, and let's see where we get to. One thing we didn't talk about today was that AI is making humans so much more powerful from a perspective of if you're one person managing 20 agents, you can get a lot done, but that also creates an enormous problem of misuse. We didn't talk about that at all today. The governance, the ethics around this, the case law, it's not there, and it's not keeping up. So there's a lot of things that could get in the way of this, but thanks a lot for your attention. Really appreciated you all being here, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
If there's any questions from the audience for any of kind of the McKinsey speakers, we're still around. You're happy to ask now or to grab us separately. Please do reach out if you all want to have further discussion offline. Thank you everyone for participating today.